I don't like the framing of, I don't think this is fair, therefore it violates statements or guidelines by the European Commission, or it's violated, right? Yeah.
That wasn't my point. So, because you're conflating my 2 points. So my point was about reasonable suspicion, specifically why I have a problem with it. It's very clear that did not break international law. I actually said it didn't. My proof of why it breaks international law, I cited Article 5, and I'm going to cite another 5, 6 more legislations what it breaks. That hasn't got to do with reasonable suspicion. That's got to do with evidence.
Okay. So
first one was Article 5.1, which says that basically the prosecution has a duty to provide. So, for example, in the United Kingdom, in the United States, what happens is the prosecutor gains the information. And this is the same in Romania, where it should be according to Article 5.1 as well as according to international law. What the prosecutor does is he gets the information. He looks at it. Look, this is the strong points for my case, but actually these are the weak points because this proves the defendant's case. Right. I'm going to collate all of that and give it to the prosecutor. So in this case is DICOT, and then the prosecutor then makes a decision based on both of the evidence and decides, wait a sec, the evidence isn't strong enough because our case is weak at this point. I'm not going to take this forward to prosecute. And so in the United Kingdom, the prosecutor is called the CPS. Right. I'm saying this, where he's contravened international law, Article 5.1, is he did not provide the evidence that weakens his own case to be able to prosecute. So that was my first point.
Okay, so this goes back to his first point, that all of the evidence that is being made available by the Romanian government, by the Romanian courts, is all evidence against Andrew Tate. There's no evidence that supports his innocence, only evidence that supports his guilt. And that's where the reasonable suspicion comes into play. If all you hear is evidence of his guilt without being subject or privy to any of the evidence that makes a case for his innocence, of course you're going to have reasonable suspicion. Of course you're going to have reasonable suspicion. That's a one-sided, that's like playing a baseball game. That's like playing a baseball game where one team is only allowed to hit and the other team is only allowed to be in the field, but you still score them the same. The team that's in the field is never going to score because they never get a chance to at bat. Hey, Rollo Tomasi's in the house. Oh boy, he says, oh, is it drag queen story hour again? Maybe.
You're saying they didn't give them the weaker part of the case too. So when you mentioned CCTV footage of what?
Right, so CCTV footage is imperative. Mm-hmm. It basically shows, it'll give us a very good window into understanding, were these women detained? Were they controlled?
Were they being EPAR'd?
Were they let out? It won't give us the full scope, but it'll give us a significant scope. Both inside and outside, they have the CCTV. They also had CCTV in the house where the girls were living. Mm-hmm. None of that has been included.
So they didn't...
That is insane. That's insane, guys. That's why we know this is a hit job, guys. None of the CCTV has been included in the evidence. That CCTV, just like you said, that video will allow us to see what's happening in the house. And listen, dude, the Tate brothers, they have cameras all over the house, all over their place, top to bottom. And having access to those videos would allow us to see exactly what went on. If the Romanian government is not allowing the CCTV evidence into evidence, or the CCTV videos into evidence, and again, I'm not a legal expert, but that sounds a little fucked up. Like, to the layperson, which I totally am, if you're allowing only the evidence that is against someone and just ignoring the evidence that maybe supports their innocence, that doesn't seem right.
They didn't include the CCTV footage that was actually in the house when the girls were living there?
That's right. And so, and the defense wants to include it. And I'm going to explain why that
of course they want
violates other articles within international law, which is then incorporated into Romanian law.
I don't think they have to. I don't think there's an obligation for the court to include every single piece of evidence.
It's international law.
No, hold on. To include every single piece of evidence that we would want the defense to include, right? At some point, I'm pretty sure that their goal is to just balance out whether or not a future investigation is likely to lead to some sort of criminal charge. It's not to present the entirety of the defense's case at that point in time to see if they can dismiss the charges. It's just to see if there's enough to detain them there for the investigation to continue, meaning they're going to begin to, or they're already in the process of...
Yes, but if there is evidence to the contrary, that's still important. So what Destiny is saying is that the court doesn't need all of the evidence in the short term because they're just trying to figure out whether or not an investigation should be launched. No, you absolutely, positively need all of the evidence. Nobody's trying to try this case. But if there is evidence to the contrary of what the prosecutors have, especially CCTV, wouldn't that be important? He says they don't need all the evidence. What the fuck is he talking about? Dude, if I'm a defendant, I want all the evidence in my defense to be entered into evidence.
Subpoenaing electronic records and devices and going through chat logs and everything. And the judge, insofar as the statements he's released, has felt like there are significant enough claims, and I think publicly, I think we can all see that it warrants detaining them, especially given that they're a flight risk, so that the investigation can conclude. And it might be at the end of that investigation they decide, well, there's nothing going on here, and then they release them. But I think right now what we've seen publicly is we've all seen there's plenty enough evidence out there to say it's probably something here that's worth investigating.
That's not correct, because the reason why they have this process is because you can give someone who's been accused of a crime due process. He's given an opportunity to present the evidence, and then the CPS makes the decision. The reason for that is because everybody knows if you have a scenario in any kind of system where the prosecutor only provides positive evidence to try and prosecute, and he doesn't provide the evidence that weakens his case, you will end up in trial no matter what. And then what will happen is everybody knows, even if you're innocent, trial risk could go wrong and you could go to jail. Hence why they have these things in place to ensure that doesn't happen, and more innocent people aren't incarcerated. And I know you're from the United States, where there's a huge amount of incarcerations, more than anyone per capita around the world, as well as, for example, in the United States, you have much more black people, Hispanic people, 300% more, who have been incarcerated. So again...
Devin says they are playing it safe. There's too much international attention for them to just let them go. Devin, I gotta time you out for that. Sorry. Nope. Sorry. Nope. Sorry, Dev. No. What's happening to the Tate brothers is not fair. This is clearly a hatchet and a railroad job. Clearly. I don't give a shit how much international attention this is getting. There's a difference between right and wrong. Due process is in place for a reason.
This is an example of another black man who's basically being incarcerated in... Sorry, you left. Do you not agree?
I don't know. I don't think this has anything to do with black men or whatever that's being incarcerated. I don't know why that's even... I don't know why it even got brought up.
It does. Because basically you're ignoring the fact that...
Okay, so he brought up the race... I'll let him talk. I don't know. I think I might be with Destiny on this one. I don't want to try to make this a black and white thing.
He's in Eastern Europe. It's basically has a significant amount of issues in terms of race issues.
It also has a significant amount of issues in terms of sex trafficking.
Yeah, well, it has, and we will talk about that. But in terms of the significant amount of race issues, significant amount of Islamophobia, you have a scenario where this country has not allowed any kind of dark immigrants into their country, but now they've changed that for Ukrainian immigrants and allowed a significant amount in. You've got a significant amount of history of Islamophobia. So, of course, when a man...
Okay, so you can see Destiny's face. Destiny's facial expression and his body language tells me that he doesn't necessarily buy this, right? But and you guys know me, man. I don't like to make everything about race. That's for somebody else to do. However, Andrew Tate did just recently convert to Islam, if I'm not mistaken. Andrew Tate did recently convert to Islam. And if there is Islamophobia in Romania, that could possibly be playing a role. Number one. Number two, Andrew Tate is, I mean, he's biracial. His mother was white, his dad is black. His dad was black, his mother is white. Right? So imagine this. This is interesting. Now, this is an interesting paradox. Most people who had never heard of Andrew Tate before all of this came about, most people were unaware that he was biracial, right? If you look at the way Andrew looks, the way he walks, the way he talks, he looks white, right? Yes, yes, he's a darker, he's a little darker, maybe he has something else in him, but he's pretty much treated like a white guy, right? What if Andrew Tate actually looked like a black man? What if Andrew Tate looked like a black man? You know what? Chat, help me out here. Help me out here in the chat. If Andrew Tate looked like a black man, like was obviously black, like looked like the typical African American man, would he be treated differently? Would he be treated better, or would he be treated worse? You know what I mean?